Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Hello guys, wherever you are, thank you so much. We are glad that you're here. Kama kawaida, I'm so glad that you join us on board. Today being on Good Friday, I can see a good sunlight out there wherever you're watching us from, whichever part of the globe you are. Karibu sana. We are happy to have you on board. Today being a Friday of 26th of the Friday, beautiful month that is coming to an end, beautiful year of 2021, right? Kama kawaida, we have a brand new topic today, a very serious issue that we are going to discuss. Kindly, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, welcome on board and let's learn something. And ensure that you learn something at the end of the day, because this one, it doesn't call about what you do, but it calls about how you do it. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and allow me to welcome on board our guest on a set, Mucha Mulingo. Mucha, how are you? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, I'll request our guest, Mucha Mulingo. Mucha, who is Mucha and why is emotional intelligence? Like, why do we have to take a look at emotional intelligence?
So, Mucha Mlingo is an emotional intelligence coach. I have been working in the space of emotional intelligence for the last 5 years or so. My background is in financial services, so I am a banker previously to this, and my work ended me up working in a training department. And so my last job before I started working for myself, I was working for a financial services company in the training department. When I relocated to Kenya in 2008 as a result of my husband being moved here for work, I decided to look around and see what I would do with myself and began to work in the space of training. And so I set up my consultancy firm, PTS Africa, in 2010. And initially, we trained in sales, customer service, because that's my area of expertise. Throughout my journey of training, working with organizations that were looking to impart skills to their sales team, I kept looking for what I thought was the X factor. Because I always wondered what makes the difference between someone who attends the training and really absorbs the learning and takes it and runs, someone who actually goes out there and does everything that they have been taught to do in class. And so I was constantly on the lookout, wondering what that X factor was. And some years ago, I came across some work by Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence, and it really blew my mind. I realized that finally I understood what the X factor was, the difference between those who just tread water and those who are able to power up their careers and achieve the success they desire. And so emotional intelligence became my thing. I started reading up more about it. I started, investigating more about it. And I now have a number of EQ certifications. So that's a bit about me. Why EQ? Research shows that emotional intelligence is a key indicator of success. Whilst many of us have thought that IQ is the most important, what we're learning more and more, individuals who have an average IQ are outperforming individuals with a higher IQ many times over. And the search to understand why this was the case led to an understanding of this thing called emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? Well, there are very many definitions that exist, but emotional intelligence simply is being able to utilize both the rational part of the brain and the emotional part of the brain for success, to make better decisions, utilizing the rational part of the brain and the emotional part of the brain to make better, more optimum decisions. And so, emotional intelligence is a game changer. It is a difference between those, like I've already said, who are treading water and those who are able to fly to success. Today, we're talking about emotional intelligence at work, and I'm looking at the time. In the few moments I have, I'd like to share I'd like to share a little about the power of emotional intelligence and then some tips for someone who's thinking, well, okay, that sounds interesting. What do I do next? So let's start with exploring emotional intelligence a little bit. As I've already mentioned, research shows that individuals with average IQ are outperforming individuals with high IQ. So the question is why? And Daniel Goleman began his work, and he has the book that has become quite famous that looks at why EQ can be more important than IQ. As a professional, IQ is important. Your technical skills are important. Your technical skills will differentiate you from those that you work with, those around you. But the reality is, your technical skills, in and of themselves, are not sufficient. Your technical skills may get you the job, but your technical skills will not cause you to thrive in that place of work. Your technical skills will enable you to close a deal, but your technical skills, in and of themselves, will not allow you to complete the project successfully. There's something else that you need, and that something else is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is not just this wishy-washy skill. It's not about, sitting in a circle and singing kumbaya. Emotional intelligence is a soft skill that actually drives bottom line results. There are copious amounts of research and case studies that show this fact, that individuals who are higher in emotional intelligence are more successful. How do we define success? Well, I'm part of a global organization called 6 Seconds. 6 Seconds is the largest emotional intelligence network. And as a network, we are on a mission to help people to understand the power of emotional intelligence and understand how they can utilize it. And what we know from our research is success can be categorized in 4 ways, or we define success in 4 ways. The first thing our research has shown is that individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective. Effectiveness is really about the ability to get things done, the ability to execute tasks, to drive execution, and complete the tasks that you begin. Individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective. In addition to this, individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more or are better able to build, maintain, develop relationships. Individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are better able to build and maintain relationships. And this is a crucial skill for success at work because we work with people. And so that's the second indicator of emotional intelligence. The third indicator of emotional intelligence is something we call high emotional intelligence are greater or have greater levels of well-being. And well-being here speaks to spiritual, speaks to physical, speaks to mental, and speaks to emotional. And so individuals who are high in emotional intelligence have greater well-being. And then lastly, individuals who are high in emotional intelligence have greater quality of life. So quality of life really is about satisfaction. And so our research shows that individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more effective, form and cultivate better relationships, have greater well-being, and better quality of life. And so this is how we are defining success. When we say individuals who are high in emotional intelligence are more successful, we're talking about those 4 domains. And so this is why this is a skill you need to pay attention to. Think about it. As a professional doing your work, would it not be great if you were more effective? Would it not be fabulous if you were able to build, develop stronger relationships? Would it not be a differentiating factor for you if you could say that you are in balance as far as your well being and that your quality of life is great? I'm sure you would agree that it is. And so, this is why emotional intelligence is important. So, now that we've talked about the why, and given you a case for emotional intelligence, let's now talk about the how. How can individuals develop greater emotional intelligence? And so I want to share with you some tips that can help you to develop greater emotional intelligence at work. And these tips are practical tips that you'll be able to utilize so that you can strengthen this muscle. I like to call emotional intelligence a muscle because the reality is that emotional intelligence is a skill. And I think that's what excites me most about emotional intelligence. That's one of the reasons why I get, really excited. I call myself an EQ fanatic. One of the reasons why I'm fanatical about emotional intelligence is because I realize that it's a skill that is essential for success. It is a skill that differentiates those who will thrive in their profession. And at the same time, it is a skill that can be developed. So, how can someone develop emotional intelligence so that they can thrive at work? Well, I'm going to share some tips with you. Tips that will help you to leverage emotional intelligence to power up your career. So, the first thing is that you must be honest with yourself. It's imperative that you develop greater self awareness and be honest about your strengths, your weaknesses. Be honest about your areas of development. Be honest about your emotions and how you typically tend to deal with emotions. Be honest about the triggers, those things that when they happen, they cause you to lose your mind. Be honest about the buttons that people are able to push. So, the first tip is to be honest with yourself. How do you do that? Practice self reflection and dig deep to develop a true picture of yourself. Self reflection allows you to reflect on what's working and what's not. And this will enable you to identify what to keep and what needs to change. So, what's the action? Set aside a small portion of your day every day for self examination. Consider your day, consider your thoughts and your feelings, and all the actions that you took. Peel back the layers and take time to discover the reasons behind them all. The better you become at understanding yourself, at picking up on each of the areas that are areas of strength and each of the areas that are areas of development, the more you're able to then feed forward that information so that you can make better decisions. Remember, we said that one of the definitions of emotional intelligence is being able to use rational part of your brain and the emotional part of your brain to make optimum decisions. We make better decisions when we're able to reflect on where we are and use that insight appropriately. And so the first tip is that be honest with yourself. Practice self reflection so that you can truly get to the heart of who you are and how you behave. Tip number 2, ready, steady, pause. Do you rush to judgment before you know all the facts? Do you react or do you respond? You have the power to respond. You have the power to pause in any moment, reflect before you respond to the external stimuli that exists. Yes, it's true. People may push your buttons. Yes, it's true. There may be things that drive you crazy, but the reality is you have the power to choose. The emotional part of the brain is powerful enough to override rational thinking. But you can pause and you can choose to take a different approach. Adding that pause, taking a moment to think about how you will respond to a situation, especially where your buttons have been pushed, is extremely important. And adding that pause, that layer of observation and mindfulness will actually make you more effective at work. So, what's the action to take here? Take a mindful pause. Count to 10. Drink some water. Between stimulus and response, pause and reflect on taking action to ensure that you get the outcome that you really want. We've all interacted with individuals who will say, "No, but this is how I am. I can't help myself." That's not quite right, because we can help ourselves. As human beings, we have the power to choose. We have the power to respond rather than react to the situations that occur during the course of our day. Tip number 3, practice empathy. Your co-workers' actions may push your buttons. Your clients may drive you up the wall. But before you write them off, put yourself in their shoes. Is there a reason why they act the way that they do? Increased empathy will help you to successfully navigate conflict and ultimately build stronger relationships at work. So, what is the action that you can take? Listen to your colleagues closely and with intent, and not just for the sake of listening. Listen with an open heart and mind, and pay attention to their nonverbal cues. As you listen, try to understand their perspective. You may not be able to truly walk in their shoes because you may not be able to understand things or experience what they're experiencing. But empathy can bring you close, and empathy can change how you interact with others. Tip number 4, forgive yourself. Be kind to yourself. We hold ourselves to an extremely high, sometimes impossible standard. Stop holding yourself to that unrealistic standard of perfection. Admit your errors, take responsibility for any negative consequences, and then learn the necessary lesson. So, what's the action you can take here? Each time, consider every mistake you make as a learning experience. When you take a misstep, focus on the options that you have to make it right and the lessons that you can learn going forward. Tip number 5, express gratitude. Many psychological studies prove the power of gratitude, from enhanced mood, improved productivity, and stronger relationships. I'd like you to take the following action. Remember, we're learning how we can practice emotional intelligence. And so for the action for tip number 5 is this one. At the start of every week, write down 3 things that you love about your career, 3 things that you love about your job, 3 things that you love about your career journey, and commit to reviewing and updating that list at the start of every week. There's something about starting the week grateful that actually trickles down into everything else that you do that week. And so, express gratitude, and you will find that it makes a really big difference. So let me recap those tips again. The 5 tips that will help you leverage emotional intelligence to power up your career. If you've just joined me, we're talking about the power of emotional intelligence and how it is a key differentiator between those who will be successful at work and those who will not. And I'm sharing 5 tips that can get you started. If you're one of those people who's thinking, well, sounds good, but where do I start? So let me recap the 5 tips again. Tip number 1, be honest with yourself. The action here is to set aside a portion of your day every day for self-reflection so that you can understand yourself better. Tip number 2, ready, steady, pause. Don't rush to judgment. Take a breath, count to 10, learn to respond rather than react. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. Take it. Take your time and don't just jump right in. Number 3, practice empathy. As much as your co-workers, as much as your colleagues and clients may drive you crazy sometimes, practice empathy. Practice empathy. The action you need to take here is to listen to your colleagues closely and with intent, and not just for the sake of it. Listen clearly, listen keenly, and try to understand their perspective. And tip number 4 was to be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. We hold ourselves to an unrealistic expectation, So be kind. When you make mistakes, focus on the lesson that you can learn. And then tip number 5, express gratitude. Start each week by focusing on what you're grateful for at work, and you will be amazed at the impact that it will have as you go forward. So, 5 tips that you can utilize that will help you to practice emotional intelligence. Why? Emotional intelligence is a game changer. I cannot say that enough. Emotional intelligence will be the difference between those who thrive at work and those who somehow just seem to tread water, unable to achieve the success that they would like to achieve. If you want to achieve that success, if you want to have increased efficiency, better relationships, greater well-being, and increased levels of excuse me, quality of life, then emotional intelligence is the thing that you have to do. What's powerful about emotional intelligence is that it is a skill. That means that anyone can develop it. Wherever you are, however you're starting, it is a skill that you can practice. There are some individuals who have some natural tendencies towards emotional intelligence. If you watch a group of children playing in a playground, you may find that when one falls, there's that one child who runs to make sure that the fallen child is okay. We would say that that child has natural amounts of empathy. But it doesn't mean that if you don't, you can't learn. It doesn't mean that if you are low, you can't increase. Emotional intelligence is a skill, and all you need to do is to practice, and you will get better at it. I remember when I started driving, there were so many things to learn. When you learn how to drive a manual car, you've got to think of the steering. You've got to think of changing the gears. You've got to think of your mirrors and keeping an eye on what's going around you. And you have to do all of those things, including your footwork with the clutch and the accelerator and the brake, without actually looking down. And so when you start, it's really difficult. I remember going for driving lessons and feeling really frustrated. But over time, I became better. I don't drive a manual car anymore, but whenever I do, I don't have to look to see where the gears are. I can just change them automatically. I'm not really paying attention to what my feet are doing. It just happens automatically. Why is that? Because I've gotten better as I've driven. Emotional intelligence is a skill, and the more you practice, the better you will get. Franklin, I would like to see if there's anyone who would like to ask any questions at this point so that I may be able to answer them. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take those questions at this time. And I'd like to also share a link, a download. Those 5 tips I shared, they are available as a download. So if there's anyone who feels, oh my goodness, Mucha, I was writing, but I couldn't write all of it down, I'd love to share a link to download so people can actually download those 5 tips that I shared. But for now, if there's any questions, I will take those.
Well, thank you, Mucha. Thank you so much for that. And dear viewers, wherever you are watching us from, remember to drop your comment or question to Mucha, more especially when you really want to understand more about this emotional intelligence. Now, before we go to the comments, Mucha, I have a question.
Yes, please.
You understand there's at a normal working setup, there's this day when you wake up and you are too much of a hyper, everything comes the right way. And there's that one day, I don't know whether to say that day is somewhere around the corner when everything seems to go south. Now, and you wonder that at this point, my output is supposed to be at the same. So as a colleague, and I have my colleagues that I need to interact with. So how do I create a balance between the two? And remember, this is a day now that things are going south. Kindly advise on that. What's your take on that?
Thank you very much for that question, Franklin. I think The first thing is there is a difference between the individual whose day has gone south and yet they are not paying attention. They're not paying attention to the emotions that are causing them to feel that way. The first thing is to actually pay attention. Now, it may sound so simplistic, but it's really true. The first part is to pay attention. Pay attention to your emotions. And then, what is that emotion trying to tell you? When we are feeling big emotions, and those big emotions are influencing how we behave, and those big emotions are causing us to behave in ways that we are not happy about, there is a tool that we utilize called VET. And one of the things we say is vet emotions. So what is this vetting? V stands for validate. Franklin, it's extremely important that we validate what we're feeling. When you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, understand that your emotions are data. Everything that you feel has a purpose. There is no good or bad emotion. Emotions just are. They are insight. Your emotions are a message from yourself to yourself, letting you know how things are. And so validate that emotion. Validating just means tell yourself it's okay to feel that way, because it is. Whilst it may not be okay to wallow in that emotion in the long term, it's okay in that moment to feel what you're feeling. So validate it. Consider your emotions as a friend, an ally giving you insight, and just admit to yourself that, yeah, today is not a good day, and this is how I'm feeling. Once you validate your emotions, the next step is to explore. Explore that emotion to understand exactly why you're feeling that way. The challenge we have, Franklin, is often we wake up, it's not a great day, on the wrong side of the bed, irritable for no apparent reason, and then you just proceed with your day. What you need to do is pause to determine why is it, because every emotion has insight. Remember what I said, emotions are data. And so peel back the layers. I like to use the illustration of an iceberg. An iceberg usually has a small portion of it above the surface, but the bulk of it is beneath the surface. And so on days like that, you need to go beneath the surface to understand the underlying emotions that are causing what you're seeing on the surface. So explore. Take your time to ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? So if I wake up and for some reason I'm feeling extremely anxious, the idea is to ask myself, what is this anxiety? The idea is to understand what is causing this. Why am I feeling anxious? If this anxiety is meant to give me insight, what insight can I use? As you begin to explore, you find that you are able to actually get a handle on that emotion. When we run away from our emotions, when we suppress our emotions, when we ignore our emotions, what happens is that they expand and they are more likely to take over. But when we pay attention, name it to tame it. When you're able to name what you're feeling, to truly explore why, what happens is the intensity of the emotion reduces. The last part of the VET, VET, is to transform that emotion. And what happens is, as you're exploring, as you're beginning to understand why you're feeling, you transform that emotion. You talk in very many spaces or forums or online. There is a phrase I love to use emotions as a strategic resource. The T part of the VET, VET, use that resource. Make a decision. Now that you have all that insider information, use it appropriately. And so, going back to the example I gave, where perhaps I'm feeling overly anxious, when I explore what that anxiety is, perhaps I begin to understand that the anxiety is driven by a meeting that I have with my boss later that day, or that anxiety is driven by a conversation I had with a spouse the day before in the evening, or that anxiety is driven by a presentation I need to make to a customer. And when I dig beneath the surface, I'm able to pick up on that insight and use that information. If the anxiety is because of a presentation, what can I do? Prepare better. If the anxiety is caused by a conversation, maybe one of those intense moments of fellowship with a spouse, what can I do? Resolve the problem. And so emotions give us insight. And when we are feeling a little overwhelmed by our emotions, when you're having one of those very bad days, what you need to do is vet those emotions, validate, explore, and then transform. Franklin, I hope I've answered your question sufficiently.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mucha, for that understanding. At least now I know how to strike a balance between the two. And now, guys, wherever you're watching us from, please ensure that you share your comments so that we get to learn and hear from the expert. And from the comment section there, Shaban Mohammed, you're saying emotional intelligence is a good topic. Tune from Kwale. Thank you so much. Now, there is a question, Mucha, from Shaban. Saying, allow me to show it on the screen, saying, thanks, Mucha. How can I get to understand this crazy colleague who feels that they are always right at the workplace? Nice presentation. You can read it from your end.
How do I understand this crazy colleague who feels that they're always right in the workplace?
Yes.
Well, so there's a number of approaches, Shaban, as I think through the answer to your question. So the first thing is, there is power in empathy. There is power in the that you are going to give someone the benefit of the doubt. You are going to extend yourself to consider their circumstances and consider why they behave the way they behave. I don't think there's anyone who wants to be, or who, how can I phrase this? I don't think there is anyone that is beyond reach, in the sense that when we extend ourselves and, look to with empathy to truly understand that person, you will find that it begins to melt down some of those corners that they have, some of those sharp corners. So I would say that empathy is a solution to that individual. But Shaban, here's the thing. As far as emotional intelligence is concerned, you can only work on, you can't work on someone else. And so you might find that this individual still remains how they are, regardless of how you extend yourself, regardless of how you reach out to try and connect. We don't want to make it seem like emotional intelligence is being a doormat. It doesn't mean that you must lie down and allow this individual to walk all over you. It's important for you to set boundaries. It's important for you to set boundaries as to, what you will allow someone to do or say to you. But the fact still remains, extend empathy to them. But as you extend empathy, have your boundaries and understand that you do not have the power to change them. The only person you can change is yourself. And so if this individual persists in that way, you're going to have to find ways to work around. You're going to have to find ways to work around this person with that I am always right kind of mentality. And, we often want to fight fire with fire, but usually when we fight fire with fire, all that happens is we cause an explosion. So I would say that, there is some wisdom required in dealing with difficult individuals. And that may be in Shaban's case where the person is a know-it-all, or it could be where it's a tyrant boss, or it could be a boss that's micromanaging you, or it could be a customer who just, has these unrealistic expectations. When we're dealing with people who are difficult, the reality is that we must start by extending ourselves and looking to be more empathetic towards that person, to try and understand why they behave the way they behave. But like I said, I'm putting a disclaimer that empathy is within boundaries, because you don't want to be a doormat. Emotional intelligence is being soft. It isn't, allowing people to do anything or say anything. Emotional intelligence is strength, but it's strength in a way that is diplomatic. It's strength in a way where you're going out of your way to really try and understand where someone's coming from. When we extend empathy to others, there's something that happens. Usually, when we extend empathy to something happens. The connection between us increases. And so that is the way to start. Start by extending empathy. But like I said, where you find an individual, you've extended empathy, you really feel that you've gone out of your way, and really you have gone out of your way, and there is no difference, then there is wisdom that is required. And like I said, I wouldn't advise fighting fire with fire. You don't want to get into a match of, I know better. So you have to find ways in which to showcase what you need to showcase what you know, and to work with that individual. Another thing is, there are times where you can actually have a conversation with someone and you can give them feedback. Now, the challenge you have with a know-it-all is they are less likely to receive that feedback. But I would say that where it's possible, give that person feedback and let them know that the way they're behaving is impacting your work relationship. The last thing I'd say is, if this individual is someone that you feel you can't give any feedback to, then is there someone else who you feel they listen to? Is there someone else who has influence over them? Then maybe you can approach that individual to give feedback. So the three things I said: number one, practice greater empathy. It may be difficult, but try anyway. Put yourself in that individual's shoes. As you practice empathy, practice it within boundaries, because at the end of the day, being emotionally intelligent isn't being soft. The second thing I said is, where possible, give that individual feedback. Have a conversation with them and let them know the specific things they are doing that are impacting your relationship in a negative way. And then lastly, if you feel that they wouldn't listen to you, it's not possible for you to give them that feedback, then I would say someone else who's able to give them feedback. Is there someone else that they listen to? Because you can ask that individual to do that for you. So that's the answer I would give to that question. Franklin, I'm not sure if it's on my end where there's connectivity issues or if it's on your end. I've seen you join the screen, but I'm not seeing.
Okay, thank you. I guess now you can hear me.
Yes,
Thank you for that answer, Musha. And I know time has gone, but allow me to ask one last question from my end. Is that you mentioned about once you do a self-assessment and you see where you are. Now, kindly, is it possible that you can guide someone through? Actually, you can guide me through on, because I know where I am right now as far as trying to understand, and then where I want to be. So that procedure, or rather the process, is there a place where I can go and for how long I can get practice, so that at least I know I cannot be perfect, but I can be somewhere. Mucha, you can hear me? Hello, Mucha.
I can hear you, Franklin, but
Hello. Seems there's a connection net. Hello, Mucha, you can hear me?
Franklin, can you hear me now?
Seems there's a connection. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
All right. I'm sorry. It seems like an issue with our connection. So let me understand your question, Franklin. You were asking were you asking what to do next now that someone knows where they are? Is that the question?
Yes. So, what is the procedure, and how can I improve my performance in that, when it comes to emotional intelligence?
Okay. So I think there's a number of things that an individual do in order to improve their emotional intelligence. I shared the 5 tips on practical things that you can do on a daily basis to help grow your emotional intelligence. The second I would say is there are so many books available. There are so many articles online that will help to increase your understanding of emotional intelligence. So I would encourage those who are listening to do some research and start reading books that will help you and support you in your EQ journey. And then the third thing I would say is that there are EQ programs that you can attend, training programs that will help you to understand at a deeper level. In a presentation where we're talking for about 10 minutes, all you can do is give a very surface introduction to emotional intelligence. It's not possible in this setting to be able to go deep into what emotional intelligence or how you can practice emotional intelligence. So what I would say is that for those who are interested, those who feel that this is something that they want to invest in, then look out there for programs that help you to practice emotional intelligence. Franklin, if you allow me to say, we have one such program, which we call our EQ Masterclass. And our EQ Masterclass is a webinar that really helps individuals who are interested to understand how they can practice greater emotional intelligence. And we actually have an EQ 101 masterclass next week on Tuesday. So that's also another space or another place that we can learn. So what I said, what next? How can someone actually start walking that walk of emotional intelligence? Number one, I shared 5 tips. I shared 5 tips that you can utilize to be able to practice emotional intelligence. If you'd like to download those tips, you can go to our website. That's www.pts.co.ke/EQ cheat sheet. That's www.pts.co.ke/EQ cheat sheet. So you can download those 5 tips that I shared. That's the first step. Step number 2, I said read books. There are so many books out there about emotional intelligence. So I encourage you to get into the habit of reading. You can learn for yourself. The third tip I gave is that there are courses you can take. There are programs. There are programs that are available online. LinkedIn Learning has a number of programs that you can do on emotional intelligence. And I also shared that we have our EQ 101 masterclass that you can also have a look at. You can find details of the EQ 101 masterclass on our website. Our website again is www.pts, that's Papa Tango Sierra, .co.ke, www.pts.co.ke. Franklin, I hope I've answered your question on how someone can actually operationalize this journey to emotional intelligence, to greater emotional intelligence. And one of the things Franklin said is, I don't think there's a expert status. Even I am learning as a emotional intelligence practitioner. I am still learning. I am still on that EQ journey. And so it's a journey that is lifelong. And so I encourage you to take it. Franklin, I don't know if there's any other questions. I think I see some questions come. Shaban, you're very welcome. I'm glad that I see your comments. Thank you very much, Shaban. It's great to hear from you and to have you online. Thank you as well, Daniel. It's great to have you online as well.
Thank you, Mucha. Now, since
Franklin,
time has really
I'm not sure if you are having issues
I'm saying thank you
connecting,
so much
or perhaps it's on my end. On my end, it looks perfectly fine. So I don't know if it's on your or mine.
Okay, you understand the issues with technology.
Do we have any other questions?
Now, not really. We do not have any question, Mucha, and I can see that time is really moving. Thank you for at least sparing some few minutes. I know it wasn't easy to get you out of your busy schedule, but we really do appreciate. And maybe now, before we wrap it up, what is your parting shot? I mean, the last thing that you can tell me and my other members for the profession.
I am not hearing members. You. I am not sure if it is on my end or on your end.
You
All
can
right.
get me
The
now?
parting shot, in essence.
Yes.
All right. All right. Yeah. So my parting shot is this, Franklin. The reality is that emotional intelligence is a skill. Emotional intelligence is a skill that everyone can develop. And it starts with understanding how important this skill is. It starts with understanding how important this skill is. So I think that's what I would say, that emotional intelligence is a skill and you can develop it. The second thing I would say is this: emotional intelligence is a game changer. Invest in emotional intelligence, invest in building this skill, will see the difference. Honestly, you will see the difference. Emotional intelligence is not just a nice to have. As we've navigated the trauma of the pandemic, I think everyone will agree that it has shown us how powerful our emotions are. Emotions can either aid you as you move forward or can hold you backwards, hold you hostage. And the difference is emotional intelligence. Let me say that again. Your emotions can hold you backwards, can hold you hostage, or your emotions can propel you forward like rocket fuel. The difference is emotional intelligence. And what's awesome about this skill called emotional intelligence is the fact that it is learnable. So the power to practice, the power to get better is within your hands. You have the power to influence your trajectory in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine, just by investing the time to practice emotional intelligence. And as I've already mentioned, for those of you who are thinking, how do I do that? I've shared in the link the download. It's called the EQ cheat sheet. I've shared it in the link, so you can download that. I've also shared in the link our EQ masterclass, which is upcoming next week on Tuesday. So feel free to engage with me if you would like to learn more. Franklin, allow me to also say that I share a lot about emotional intelligence on social media. So anyone who is interested, who wants to listen a bit more so they can learn a little bit more about what EQ is, can follow me on social media. My social media handle is just at Mucha Mlingo. So follow me on social media and I will continue to support you in your EQ journey. Franklin, I think that's it from me. That was a bit of a long parting shot. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mucha. Thank you so much for that comprehensive response in that regard. We really do appreciate, and I believe anybody watching has really walked away with something that can be of great benefit to their life, more especially professional life, as they aspire to take it to another level. Thank you, Mucha, so much. Thank you for setting time for us. We really do appreciate, as members and within the landed professional, or I can say members of ISK, surveyors, we will be engaging, and you have shared more of your contacts so that whoever could be having a more question, maybe they can get in touch. Thank you for sharing. I can see you sharing. So if should you be having any question, any queries regarding how to grow emotional intelligence, there you go. You have it all. Thank you so much, Mucha. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to mention on Twitter, they can get you at Mucha Mulingo, this, as well as
Yes,
Facebook. And
yes,
remember, it's
everywhere.
PT Africa, that is Emotional
Yes,
Intelligence
so
Company.
everywhere.
Thank you so much, Mucha,
Yes,
for your time.
thank
We
you.
look forward
Thank you.
to more further engagement on this one, and more especially I have learned something. Yeah, so should I be having any question, trust me, I'll knock at your door someday. Thank you so much, Mucha.
Thank you. Thank you, Franklin, for having me.
You're welcome.